Hey, folks, this is Andrew Bennett, and we are going to be looking today at the economy. What's going on with the economy? Man, I got a new light in my office. Whoa, it's very bright. I actually got it because the chandelier that I had before hung down in the way and like created too much light, and this one creates, it looks like just as much light. It looks like snow all on the top of my head, which is just insane. Anyway, I'm going to go over here and share this. And this is a presentation is basically about the economy, what's going on, how we are headed for recession. And I don't think there's a darn thing this administration can do about it. They are not competent to deal with it, and they have really put us in this situation. Um, so first off, let's talk about consumer debt. Consumer debt is at a record high, $17.9 trillion dollars right here. Now look back in 2007, before the meltdown then, it was only 12.7. So that's not good. Credit card delinquency is rising. 30 to 90 day delinquencies are at multi-decades high. Back in 2007, credit card delinquency was not critical yet. It rose after the meltdown really started. Auto loan delinquencies are also up sharply. And one of the things we look at when we look at the jobs report and you look at unemployment numbers look really pretty solid, like employment's pretty solid. But what is happening is you've got a historic high of people working multiple jobs. So unemployment looks low, and it is low, but a lot of that's because people are working multiple jobs. Okay. One of the things to look at too is housing cost to income ratios again exceed 2007. Back in 2007, you had um, income was about 5.4% higher than what am I trying to say here? Basically, price to income ratio. Anyway, it's higher now, significantly higher now than it was then. Back then, or historically, about 28% of your income goes to housing costs. Now it's at 45%. And it's not going to get better because you got a lot of homeowners that have like a really low percentage rate mortgage. They're not going to sell. So that chokes off supply, which drives prices up even higher. So we've got housing costs out of control in addition to a lot of consumer debt. What else have we got? Alrighty. Equity concentration. Now, this is about the stock market. In the dot-com peak, this is 2000, 2002 is when 2001 or 2002 is when the dot-com bubble was. But you basically then had you had 10 companies that really drove a lot of um, drove the stock market: Microsoft, GE, Cisco, Intel, Exxon, Walmart, Lucent, Citigroup, Oracle, IBM. And those 10 companies were about 27% of the stock market. Now, these seven companies, we're going to call them the Magnificent Seven, are 31% of the stock market. Why does that matter? It matters. And we'll talk about that on the next page. Okay, so their valuations are really high. And really high valuations are basically, hey, in a perfect situation, these companies are just going to keep on making money and it's going to be a good thing, but the world is not perfect. Um, so if things stumble economically, then if a big hedge fund or a pension fund needs to raise cash, they sell their most liquid holdings first. and that's the Magnificent Seven. So in a crisis, all seven of these get sold at once, and so everything kind of comes down together. Think about your index funds that make it worse. Index funds automatically buy more of the heaviest weighted stocks. That drives the seven higher, and it works in reverse. If investors pull money out of the index funds, it's amplified. So another thing is that most Americans' retirement savings sit in a target date or in index funds. That means that the average person's retirement security is now tied tighter than ever to these seven tech companies. So this is a new risk we haven't really seen before, and not a good risk at that. So this concentration of these seven stocks really matters. Now let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz. So there is the futures price of gas, which is the um, let's see, which is the orange line here. And you notice it has gone down in May, from May to now. But this price that's being reported is the futures price. It is not the actual price. Only about 5% of oil that's landed, that is bought and processed, hits at the futures price. Futures are spot and sold every day, every hour of the day. So futures are up and down all over the place. They are not necessarily tied to the actual price of gas. Okay. The blue line is indicative of the actual price of gas, where it is landing, where when those tankers get in and the gas is offloaded from those tankers, what is the price of gas? Okay, so you can see the blue line and the green line both are indicative of that. And you see the green line starts lower, but it's still higher than it was in January, significantly higher than it was in January, and the blue line as well. So uh, gas prices are right now, they're not crazy, uh, but they are going to get worse. So this kind of explains the futures price versus the spot price or the physical price. Um, Again, here the key fact: less than 5% of futures contract result in an actual oil delivery. Most are settled in cash. Futures prices for hedging and speculation. Okay. So, and that's what gets reported a lot on television when they're talking about the price. The actual physical price. This is assessed daily by companies called Platts and Argus. You've got to have a subscription that costs thousands of dollars just to get this information. Um, and these prices, we know from, well, we know these prices are significantly higher than the futures prices. So gas is going to go up significantly more than it has so far. So this is kind of a map of the cascade of problem. One, we've got the energy shock. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz also affects fertilizer, which affects crops. It'll affect produce first, and then proteins. Cows and lambs and whatever, they're fed grains. So you got to get the increase in the grain, then it's got to get fed to the cow or whatever. So you have a 6 to 12 month delay on the food inflation. Oops. Um, then you have the problem with consumer debt. And right now we have more people renting than ever before. So then you're going to have an eviction cascade. And a lot of the places they're getting evicted from are supported by loans from regional banks and their commercial real estate departments, which could lead to um, you know stressed banks, which is again not good for the economy. Now this chart looks at 2008 to the 1973 oil shock and currently. So back then you had the financial crisis was in 2008. It was internal. It was a mortgage leverage created inside the financial system. That's what drove the problem. In 73 was external, the OPEC oil embargo. Well, now we have an external problem with the Strait of Hormuz, and we have pre-existing consumer fragility. We have two things, kind of an internal and an external problem. Consumer debt in 2008 was overleveraged on home, but now we have record debt and rising delinquencies already. Okay, it's not on homes, it's credit cards, home equity line of credits, things like that. Now, in 2008, how did they deal with it? The Fed response was aggressive rate cuts and quantitative easing. So that essentially meant, they bailed out the banks, right? Um, in 73, they hiked rates to fight inflation, but hiking rates also crushes growth. So now we're kind of boxed in because the inflation rate is pretty low. They can cut it some, but not a whole lot. And with the deficit already at record highs, um, there's just not a lot they can do. So again, this says Fed, if they cut rates, it feeds inflation. If they hike rates, it risks recession. So there's no good moves that the Fed can do in this case. Physical stimulus in 2008, you had the TARP plan. In 73, 74, there was really limited fiscal response, so they had stagflation. And again, the problem now is you had these huge tax cuts for the wealthy in both in Trump's first and second term. So the debt has just exploded under the current and former Trump administration, as well as Bush had tax cuts for the wealthy as well. So we've really cut a lot of income, and so we have a huge deficit. And so spending more, doing more deficit spending to try to stimulate the economy without raising taxes on the wealthy is just going to lead to higher and higher deficits. And it is really getting to where those are worrisome. So in 2008, you really had 18 months of acute stress. You remember they talked about it being a trough kind of recovery. In 73, 74, you had stagflation. And what we will have, I think, will likely be 24 to 36 months because of the delayed ramifications in our food supply due to the fertilizer stoppage through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's all a big problem. And I believe that's all, folks. But that is my amateur armchair quarterback analysis of what is coming down the pike. So I advise you to pay down your debt as much as you can, squirrel away as much cash as you can over the next 6 to 9 months, if this doesn't hit before then. But just get your financial house in order because rocky times are coming. That's all. I hope you learned a little bit from this, what's going on, and what might be on the way. Thank you much. Good luck out there.